was your takeaway from last evening? What did you glean? Out of all that blah, blah, blah that I said, what did you come away with? Sociogram. Yeah. 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 And you ask yourself, how did I get in that mess? Yeah. Yeah. So are you going to do anything about it?
I am.
Good. Good.
But asking the questions like, what can I start to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Just, one box at a time. Don't empty out the whole closet. Just empty out that one box and then next go to another. That's kind of that rule of 52 thing. We have 52 weeks in a year. We have 365 days. And if you dedicate a certain amount of time to a problem, it will resolve itself. But you have to focus. You can't just walk past the closet and go, boy, I need to clean that out. Boy, I need to clean that out. Boy, I need to clean that out. And so 365 days later, you still have the same stuff. So, okay, anybody else? What, come on, what'd you get?
For me, last night, the key is being able to understand that we all come to a place where we need to have a self-reflection in regards to why things happen within our family, and what is our role of how we cause it to perpetuate.
Wow.
If we continue to perpetuate it, how can we expect somebody else to change if we're not willing to change ourselves? And a lot of times, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a peer, or whether it's our children, we need to set the example to be consistent with that. I know that my kids are in their 40s, so what they know, how we can continue to do that for our grandkids as well. So we've got to be able to set the example, even though we may miss the mark. I believe that the consistency is important, and being able to have a group of people that helps us to surround ourselves while we're doing this helps keep us together.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So it's the interaction and so all that, you got all that intelligent stuff out of last night. Wow. I didn't even say any of that. That's great. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. I think you came in with a lot of that. So did any? Okay. All right. So I'm old and don't remember stuff. Okay. I know you were here. So what did you glean? Any one point? It doesn't matter. I mean, it's okay. That you're long-winded and. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it does. It does. No, that people really like my sociogram. I've been using that for 30 years to help everybody put their life in perspective. And so I literally, when I was doing my master's, because it was the old-fashioned way, there's no online stuff. I don't even think computers had been invented. We were still using sticks and stones. But I literally didn't watch TV for 3 years. I mean, I just literally didn't do it. It just didn't happen. If I did, it was in the middle of the night, a rerun of Gilligan's Island or something. I mean, I'd lay on the floor in front of the TV with it turned all the way down because I couldn't sleep. That kind of thing. So, okay. So there's snacks and food and things over there. Please eat it and be a part of that. And coffee and water, the bathrooms around the corner. Everybody else knows that. I mean, if you don't, they're around the corner. Okay. So we're going to give, I know this, we're going to give everybody just a little bit to kind of settle down. And I'm glad that you're here. And I'm glad that you're taking your Saturday morning to do this. And there may be some more people join us. We're going to look at several aspects today. We're going to look at some really serious, meaty stuff here in a minute. Anybody in here ever see the movie Rudy? Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good movie, really good movie. And my favorite line from that movie is, Rudy goes to the priest and he says, "Hey, what do I do? What's God's will? What do I do?" And the priest looks at him and he says, "I've learned two things in all these years of ministry. First, there is a God. Okay. Secondly, I'm not him." That's a big point, ladies and gentlemen. You're not him. You're not God. So have you ever looked at somebody and said something like, you're in the heat of an argument, or you're really upset, or you go and you don't love me? Yeah. I mean, everybody said something like that. Sometimes you don't love me. You don't act like you love me. You don't not act, but you don't love me. I got to tell you, you're not God. You cannot look into that person's soul and into their heart and into their mind and tell them what they feel. You just can't do it. And I also want to tell you that you don't know it, but you're all amateur psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors, because have you ever seen something on TV and some horrible thing has happened? Somebody, a child has shot a bunch of children, or somebody's driving drunk on the wrong side of the road and kills people or whatever. And have you ever actually said, "That's crazy"? That's horrible. That's crazy. That's a diagnosis. You have diagnosed more things in your lifetime than you realize. When you see a child running around a store, tearing up everything, and the parents standing there going, "Huh? Isn't that cute?" And it's wrong. And you're thinking to yourself, "Yeah, that child needs to go to the woodshed," kind of thing. That's a diagnosis. You're actually looking at a situation and realizing it's abnormal, and that normality needs to be imposed on the situation. And when you hear these horrible, heinous acts that people have done and they're in prison, and you just shake your head and you go, "That's just wrong. That's crazy. That's nuts." Well, you know what? You're right. I'm not talking about military or police. I'm talking about just random acts of violence. For somebody to actually hurt somebody, physically hurt somebody, there is a mental deficit. They're crazy. You go, "Well, he just gets angry really, really easy." No. That's not okay. It's just not okay. I'm sorry. Anger does not give you the justification for violence. You can get angry and not sin. It says something like that in the Bible. Everybody, God did not wake up this morning and go, "Oh, I am so surprised you get angry as humans." He didn't do that. He knows that as human beings, he created us. We walked out of the garden sinful. And he knew that anger is going to be part of that sin. It's going to be part of frustration. It's going to be part of rage. It's going to be part of all these things. And okay, so now follow me on this. You can die twice, or you can be born twice, but you can't do both. So I'm born, Psalm 51 says, I'm created in sin. And if I go my entire life and never accept Jesus Christ, and when I die, then I die. I die to a permanent death. Okay? Or I can be born, like Jesus said, when he said, you must be born again, and Nicodemus said, huh? And he said, you must be born of the water and of the blood. You know, you got to be born of both. And so the water had nothing to do with baptism, had to do with the mother. The water had to break, and you had to be born, and then you got to be born again spiritually, of the Spirit. So you can be born twice, or you can die twice. There is no other option. But in all of that, you're not God. You don't get to tell people how they feel. You don't get to tell people what they think. But what you do need to do to jump towards that normalcy, to get closer to normal, is you need to acknowledge them. You need to acknowledge when somebody goes, you know, I'm really upset about that, and you don't need to look at them and play God and go, no, you're not. That's not your role. Acknowledge it. Go, okay, you're upset. You don't need to fix it. Back to not God. You're just not God. You know, and I don't know if you understand how powerful that is. That is a powerful relationship healer and builder. When you begin to not argue with somebody's emotions, not argue with somebody's being upset or being depressed or being discouraged or any of the beings, when you stop trying to fix them, then you become a healer in a sense. When you simply listen and acknowledge that their feelings are legitimate. They are absolutely legitimate. Now, if you've been one of these people all your life and you tried to fix everything, you know, you're a fixer. You go, that's just the way I am. Horse spit. My dad was an alcoholic, a severe alcoholic. He was also a Marine. So I actually own the patent on and the copyright on profanity. I do. He was the drill instructor who could make all the other drill instructors blush. So I grew up with that environment. You know, hard drinking, smoked unfiltered Camels, and died young too because of it. And I learned early on. I kind of started down that road when I was young. You know, being a wild teenager. Dad died when I was in high school, you know, and you know, I was footloose and fancy free. I managed to blow 2 scholarships out of two different colleges, just wild, stupid stuff, like all 18, 19-year-olds, you know, just, y'all had it together when you were 18, 19, right? Yeah, buddy, all of us. But then I determined I didn't have to be my dad. That was a reality. That was a real big reality check. I didn't have to be him. Just because that was an example that I grew up with didn't mean that that's who I had to be. And so it was an interesting phenomenon. When I was a kid, I had made a list of all the things as a father, in my mind I made a list, of all the things as a father I would never be, and all the things as a father that I wanted to be. And so when I had kids, I was a pretty good father. I was a pretty good father. I stuck to my list. I really, really tried. Still have a great relationship with my children and grandchildren because of that. But and it's a very tragic story, but my wife over here of almost 30 years, she, bad illness, things, stuff, all that. But I was a horrible husband at first because my example of being a husband was my Marine Corps alcoholic father. That's what I knew. That's what I thought of. That's how I considered life, was in that. And thank goodness, and I was already a Christian. Okay, there's no question about this. I was a Christian, but I got into a group of older men. We would meet at 7 o'clock in the morning because that's the only time they had to go to Bible study because they were serving in the church and elders and the choir and stuff. And they asked me to lead the Bible study. And I said, sure. So we're doing the Bible study. And for the next year or so, these men mentored me. I didn't know that, but that's what they were doing. They were mentoring me and talking. So we spent a lot of time. I think we got through the first chapter of whatever it was after a year, because we spent a lot of time working on the reality of what it was to be a husband, what it was to be a person. And from that moment, I point to that moment in time as a springboard of growth. It began to happen. So a lot of times, we have epics and seasons. We have epics and we have seasons where we ultimately end up with periods of growth. It doesn't happen all at once, and we're going to look at the laws of the harvest today and in and of that. So let's start off. And if you have questions, please write them down, remember them. So this is the guy that wrote this book is a heathen, by the way. He is. He's horrible, or was horrible. I don't know if he's still alive or not. But I'm going to read the book to you. I'll even show you the pictures. See? Pictures. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. And every day the boy would come, so you can see the boy running over to the tree. And he would gather her leaves. And he would make crowns and play king of the forest. And he would climb her trunk. You can see him kind of skinnying up the trunk. And he would swing from her branches. I fell out of a lot of trees as a kid. And he would eat her apples. We know what kind of tree it is. It's an apple tree. And they would play hide and go seek. I don't know how they did that, but you just contemplate on it. They play hide and go seek. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. And the boy loved the tree very much. And the tree was happy. But time went by, teenager, and the boy grew older. Now, teenager in love. And in love, and the tree was often alone. And then one day the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy, let's climb my trunk and swing from the branches and eat apples and play in my shade and be happy." And the boy said, "I am too big to climb and play. I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money." Mom and dad pulse machine. "Can you give me some money?" "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I have no money. I only have leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city, and then you will have money and you will be happy." Okay. So now the boy who couldn't climb and swing and play was able to skinny up the tree and get the apples, properly motivated by money. And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered the apples and carried them away, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy. And the boy, boy, come climb my trunk, swing in my branches, be happy." "I am too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want a house. I want a house to keep me warm. I want a wife. I want children. So I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "I have no house," said the tree. "The forest is my house. But you may cut down my branches and build a house, and then you'll be happy." So the boy cut off all the branches and carried them away and built a house. I have no idea how he did that, but okay. And the tree was happy. But then the boy stayed away for a long time and came back to the tree, was so happy and he could hardly speak, and she whispered, "Come and play." "I'm too old to play," said the boy. I want a boat. I want a boat that will carry me away from here. Can you give me a boat? Cut down my trunk, boy, and make a boat that you can be happy. And the boy cut down her trunk, made a boat, and sailed away. And the tree was happy, but not really. After a long time, the boy came back and said, "I'm sorry, boy," said the tree, "I have nothing left to give. My apples are gone." He says, "My teeth are too weak. My branches are gone. You cannot swing. I'm too old to swing. My trunk is gone," said the tree. "You cannot climb." "I'm too tired to climb," said the boy. "I'm sorry," sighed the tree. "I wish I could give you something, but I have nothing left to give. It's all gone." "I don't need very much now," said the boy. "Just a quiet place to sit and rest." "Well," said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could, "an old stump is a good place for sitting. So come and sit down and rest." And the boy did. Everybody goes, "Oh, that's so sweet. What a loving tree. What a giving tree. How wonderful. You know, that's what mamas are supposed to do. That's how it's supposed to be." Okay, so let me ask you a question. Is there a point in that story, I know I went through it kind of quickly, but is there a point in that story that the tree should have said no? Where? Come on, where? Where do you stop? Where do you stop giving to your children? Where do you stop giving to your grandchildren? When do you say no? What would be normal? What would help them?
Say no, point of destruction.
Okay, all right, point of destruction.
Tree
Got,
is meant to give apples, leaves fall from the trees and can be used for failings, but when it becomes destructive, that's the time to say no.
okay, all right. I think that's a very good answer, very wise. That's sensible. And because one of the reasons is the tree can grow more apples. And the boy could come back next season and pick the apples. What would have even been wiser on the tree's part if the tree had said, "Keep some of the apples back, make seeds from them, and go plant more trees. And then you'll have an orchard, and you'll have all the money you need, and you can buy boats, and you can buy houses, and you can build things from the work that you're putting in." Toxicity, we've given it all sorts of names. We call it codependence. Bipolar is a big one. That's a diagnosis that's been slapped on children. And there's only 5 diagnoses that children can carry, and that's the broadest one, so you can give it the broadest spectrum of medicine. But that's neither here nor there. And then the sad part is they get diagnosed with that, and then they go all the way through their life saying that's what they are, when what they really are is schizophrenic, or they're manically depressed, or blah, 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 some other mental. Or maybe there's a closed head injury that hasn't been detected. And so, anyway, parents are children's worst enemies. I was blessed. I accepted Christ at an early age. And I was very, very, very fortunate to accept Christ at an early age. When I say that, I was 7th grade-ish, I remember Dad was in a particular alcoholic rage, and I got down by my bedside. I had an old Bible that was probably 40, 50 years old. I have, just old leather King James thing with print that big, on recycled paper. And got out on my knees, and I remember what I said. I said, "Father, they say you're my Father in heaven. Well, I need a Father on earth. I don't know who this Jesus Christ is. They say he's your son. But I'll accept him. I'll accept anything about what I need to do." And I got up off my knees, and I went to bed. And when I woke up, I was a born-again believer. It says in Romans, if you call on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, you shall be saved. Well, I hit the formula. I didn't even know it, didn't have a clue. And man, did he start to move. he started to move. So, my father was an interesting guy. He was born in 1917. I was born very late in life to my parents. And he was born in 1917, and he went through the whole Depression. By the time he was 13, he had gone back and forth to Europe as a cabin boy to put food on the table for his family. He and his brothers worked their way up to the Yukon and then to Alaska. Alaska was not a state. It was still a territory. They were carrying sidearms and having Wild West shootouts and stuff and things. And then he worked his way back down, joined the Marines. I'm giving you just a little snapshot of his life. And he was in seven landings. 7 landings in the South Pacific during World War II. He was decorated, he was wounded, he was whatever. What the funny part was, he ended up his career in Alaska, which he hated because he had escaped from Alaska when he was young. And so I say all that to tell you this. He would smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drank 1/5 minimum of Canadian Club, and sometimes 2/5. You know, I mean, he was a raging alcoholic, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. So I would walk to the local church, and that's a whole miracle in itself. And then what happened was, you know, I announced one day that I was a Christian after I kind of understood what I had become. And Dad took great delight in making fun of me. He would say, "Look, I think you're going to be a preacher." And he said, "We'll get you a tent and a bunch of one-armed deacons so that they can't steal out of the plate." You know, oh yeah, he was sarcastic as he could be. Just you know. So I went to work, and I was actually near Louisiana working for this framing company. I was older now; I could drive, and he got really sick. Put him in the VA hospital. He's in ICU. Blah blah blah. He's got tubes and stuff coming out of him. They couldn't even knock him out take him out of his pain because they figured he'd just die. And so I got there, and my relatives are all standing outside the ICU doors, and I never saw a more just. You know how you're like, oh, I hope he gets better, blah, blah, blah. You know, no, their comments were, well, you know, he did it to himself. You know, he's you know, this is it. You know, well, you know, he'll be happier when we're out of his misery, you know, kind of thing. I mean, very pessimistic about, you know, they just assumed he was going to die. So I went in and got by his bedside. And I was his old age child, you know, and he always called me baby. Because I was. I mean, to him, I was a baby. He was already ancient now, and he couldn't. He had tubes and things and stuff, and he couldn't talk. He really couldn't talk. And I did not want him to die and go to hell. And this is the toughest, meanest, most contrary person I ever met. You know. And he, so I tried to figure out how to share Jesus with him in that moment. And I had 5 minutes, but the charge nurse let me go. She figured, you know, this is his son, this is it, you know. And so I took my fist. So everybody take your fist with me. Come on, go like that, go like that, and turn them over. And I went, okay, Dad, look, in this hand, I have hell. Open it up, got hell. And this hand, I have heaven. Which would you pick? So he kind of raised his finger and he touched my heaven. You put your hands down. He touched the heaven hand. And I said, well, I'd like to lead you in a prayer. Like, you know, I don't remember the exact words I said, but and he kind of shook his head, and I knew what he was doing. He was saying, I've been too big a sinner for too long, too whatever, and let me tell you, I'm a baby in my faith. I'm a baby. I don't know anything yet. I'm really struggling, but I did know I did know, I said, look, there was a thief on the cross. And in his last minutes, Jesus said, you're saved. I said, it doesn't matter. And I went through this thing, and I said, if you want to accept Christ, shake your head. And he did. He said, yeah. And so I prayed with my father, and he accepted Christ. And he fooled them all. That tough old son of a gun lived for 2 more years. He did. Never drank again. Never touched another drop. Spent most of his time in hospitals and back and forth and stuff until he passed away. And praise God for the Gideons, the Gideon Bible Society, because in the VA, they would come by regularly and visit with him. And he would call all of his old drunk buddies and have them come up, and he would give them Gideon Bibles and share the gospel with them to the best he could. Let me tell you what happened that night. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 things. One, I'll see my Father again. And we will walk the streets of glory. And 2, all the fear in me about sharing the gospel was diminished. Because I led the toughest, scariest guy I ever knew to Christ. So you people are nothing. And that's been my attitude all these years. That fearlessness of sharing the gospel is life-changing. It's penetrating. And Peter rushed out there on that day of Pentecost, and the disciples, and they began to preach to all these, all these people accepted Christ. And he looked at everybody and said, what do we do now? And they go, well, let's baptize them. Okay, let's go get some water. You know, and that's what happened. That's how the church was birthed, out of raw courage, out of fearlessness, because they could have made lots of excuses. That flaming tongue came down. They could have gone, well, you know, we're going to get in a lot of trouble if we go out there and do this. Nah, they didn't care. That's the attitude you want to get to. You want to get to that attitude that you do not care. And it has paid dividends through the years. So I feel like we read this book about, we'll call it codependency. I don't have any other word for it at this point. About a parent, that's who the tree was, basically. And they destroyed themselves trying to help the child. And there is a place where you say no. But that's a place where you say no to a husband or a wife. There's a place where you say no to a boss. There's a place where you say no. I mean, when I was a pastor, all those many, many years ago now, you could pick one thing to do as a volunteer in the church full-time. You know, that's your thing you do, that you want to do. And you could pick something minor, like if you wanted to sing in the choir on Sunday morning, or you wanted to rotate into the nursery every now and then, or you wanted to whatever, but you couldn't pick more than that. And if nobody volunteered for that particular position, it just wasn't going to happen. Nobody wanted to volunteer to mow the yard, it just won't get mowed. You know, and honestly, learning to say no is a big part of staying healthy. There's several things I don't do anymore. One of them is go snow skiing. And there's reasons for that. I mean, look what happened to Sonny Bono. He died, you know, and believe me, going down a mountain at 60 miles an hour going, woo, is not my idea of fun anymore. Where when I was 17, 18, okay, that was cool, you know. There are things that you have to learn to say no to physically. I don't even like to go upstairs, you know. I mean, it's, you know, we were talking about carrying water. He was carrying this giant case of water. I'm going, man, I carried 6-pack at a time. I don't carry it anymore. I don't care. I'm not doing that. I'm really not. And so, fortunately, Alan has his wife. So no, seriously, we all self-impose physical limitations. We do. I mean, there are things we just don't. If you didn't ride a motorcycle when you were 20, you probably shouldn't start now. It's probably not a good idea, you know. If you know, just things that we don't do anymore. Yeah, yeah. And so because you can't start at the same level you left off at. We were talking about addiction, and when people do relapse, they're not cured, but when they relapse back into their addiction, be it alcoholism or drug addiction or whatever, the reason they OD, the reason they overdose is because they think they can start back off at the same level as they left off. And that's why they die. Because, they've been cured or they've been healed or they've been sober for a while, be it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and then something happens and now they're going to relapse and they want to start off back when they were 18 and they're now 40. Not going to work. A lot of you were athletes when you were younger, and or you were musicians, or you were whatever. I mean, you had, Well, I got to tell you, if you haven't kept it up, and you go out there to run that marathon, you're probably going to make that whole mile that and the other 25 are probably going to be elusive. So, what I'm saying in this mental health type idea is there is a right and there is a wrong. There is a good and there is a bad. There is an ecclesiastical moment, everybody's read that, where it says there's a season for all things. Season for love, season for death, season for happiness, season for children, season for taking a nap, season for, I don't know, good things like that. Well, one of the reality checks is, what season are you in? What has God appointed you to? And comparing yourself to Moses, who started at 80 with his real ministry, but he'd been working his way all the way up there for all those years, and God had to get the Egyptian out of him and get the God into him, and so. This is in CCRT, but I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to give you an idea. It's also in the chicken book and toxic stuff. So we're going to talk about toxic. The Israelites were in Egypt for 420 years before Moses came in and got them out. Okay? 420 years is longer than the United States has been the United States. Okay, and most of us, my family all came from Scotland back in, at least part of my family, back in 1849, and I got to tell you, I don't know, I've never been to Scotland. I don't know anything about Scotland except for it's there, and there's probably a bunch of short, ugly guys with red beards that I look like over there. Beyond that, I don't know a lot about Scotland other than some historical facts and that I like Braveheart. Okay, yeah. So when the Israelites had been in there for 420 years, they were more Egyptian than they were Israelites. They spoke Egyptian, they looked Egyptian, they smelled Egyptian, they walked Egyptian, they ate Egyptian food, because they know, just like us, we're over here, and that's what we do. And Moses had to go in and do that. Now, the reason they went there, God sent them there, because there was a famine in the land. And so they went over there. Remember the whole Joseph thing, and he accepted his children back, and his brothers, and set them up in the land of Goshen because Joseph was a prime minister. And so there was a drought in Israel for 7 years. Well, they got it good in Israel. I mean, in Egypt, they were doing good. I mean, they had multiplied. There was whole controversy over how come their sheep are doing better than our sheep and all this sort of stuff. I mean, and they grew and they multiplied and they multiplied and they multiplied. And you know what they did? They decided to stay. 420 years later, it was not so good. Joseph died, and then they became slaves, and on and on and on. So, in toxic relationships, this is a toxic relationship. We have only two ways we get into them. I was born into mine. My workaholic mother and my alcoholic father. So I was born into this relationship. or we freely choose to walk into them. That's marriage, boyfriend, girlfriend, so forth and so on. We walk into those toxic relationships. So we choose it. And then, like the Egyptians, we choose to stay in that toxic relationship. We don't choose to walk out of it. And we use words like, well, we really can't afford to. Well, I just want the kids to be normal. I want them to have a great Christmas. I don't care how drunk he is, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So we walk into these toxic relationships, and it's something that happens over time. Because toxic predators don't advertise it. They know they are. They know who they are, and they know what they are. Don't kid yourself. Oh, he's really not that bad, or she's really not that bad. Yes, she is. Yeah, she's obsessive, compulsive, drama queen, evil, manipulative, and lying. All of those things. And he is too. And you know how you can tell you're in a toxic relationship? First off, when you read stuff about toxic relationships, you question yourself first. You look at yourself and you ask, am I the toxic predator? Am I the toxic person, or am I the victim? That's a good, healthy person when you question yourself. It's like when you're sick and you go to the doctor. See, that's healthiness. That's being healthy. That's being smart. Being not smart is getting sick and going, well, I'll just rub dirt in it and walk it off. Okay, that's not smart. That's not healthy. Healthy is not being stubborn about it. And you question why you're sick and who's getting sick. When you go to a doctor and you go, I'm sick. And what you don't want is the doctor to lecture you. Go, well, how'd you get sick? Well, I was playing golf in the rain. Well, you really shouldn't play golf in the rain, blah, 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 blah. That's not what you're there for. What are you there for? Come on, what are you there for? What do you want him to do? Yeah, you want a prescription. Give me whatever and give me a shot and let me get out of here and give you your money. Make your Mercedes payment. I'm done. So if you question yourself, you pretty much know you're not toxic. Now, toxicity is catching. It's contagious. And so, and the toxic person knows they're toxic, and they're going to push the boundary until then. So we're gonna now look at the book. I'm going to round here, look at the book. So let's go to page 75. See, I did it this time. I said the page number. Last night I started off no page number, 75. 76, 75. There we are. Yes.
Toxic people, as you said, they know they're toxic, and what they do, they change the label. I was talking to a person a while back, and she said, I'm not rude, I'm just honest. I said, no, you know you're rude because you're saying, you're making an excuse for it.
Yep.
And the fact is, they know this, and they've changed the label. I don't mean to insult you, I'm just being honest. Well, they know they're about to insult you. So see, they really know that they are toxic. And even though they'll rationalize it and change the label on it, but the fact that they can even make that statement says, you know what kind of person you are.
Right.
You know how you're about to be perceived. Don't leave me in the room with them because we'll get in a fight. Well, then you already know what your planned behavior is. It's
Right.
a very good point, and people need to realize that.
Well, and we are all guilty of that to some degree. We all have look, none of us escape toxicity. But there's difference in pouring a whole tub of salt on your potato and sprinkling it with a little salt. There's a difference. One's flavor. Anybody in here hasn't picked up a bad habit or a bad trait or a bad mouth or a bad attitude or wake up on the wrong side of the bed and blame it on everybody else? We all have that. I mean, we've all get cut off in traffic and watch your language change. Probably something you don't want to use in church. Yeah, maybe. I'm very thankful when I grew up. I'm so thankful for this, that we didn't have cell phones, because I'd probably be in the penitentiary for all the horrible stuff I did, and or close to it, all the hey, we got evidence. Yeah. All right, so reality key guidelines, page 75, down here at the bottom. We're at the bottom section there. The problem takes on real shape and form. The evidence is in the toxic patterns affecting the victim's personal life events. So a life event is anything. It can be a wedding, it can be a baptism, it can be a dinner, it could be a shower, it could be a life event. Everything that you do is an event. There's a certain amount of prep. You go to take a shower, you take clothes off, you turn on water, let it get hot, turn on lights. I mean, this is in itself a little event. You get out, you put on deodorant, you blah, 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 dry off. Sometimes I forget to dry off. No, seriously. I think that we have to accept the fact that life events are kind of a microcosm of our whole life. And so it takes on any life event, but the problem takes on real shape and form. Problems have a life of their own. When Cain, the only place in the Bible that says God is talking to Cain, and he says, I give you a piece of advice. I give you a piece of advice. Waiting for you outside the door is sin. Waiting for you outside the door. So if you walk out there and you don't do that, he's telling him, don't do it. And so he goes out the door, the next thing you know, he kills his brother. Okay, so God tells him. His sin, his first murder, it took on form and shape and substance. All sin takes on form, shape, and substance. All sin. There is no sin that does not have equity of shape. It becomes alive. How many times have you done something really stupid in anger or pridefully, or slammed that door and you had the repercussions? Because it's taken on shape, it's taken on life. I mean, God points to the fact that, this is real. This is real. Okay, so let's go to the next one. The problem is always three-dimensional. The problem exists in the predator and the victim's mind, body, and spirit, and the problem must be treated on all three levels. So I would watch my dear mother get braced for my dad coming in at night, stone drunk, and so what good codependents do is they caution the children, they send them to their rooms, they send them to the grandmother. Shh, don't bother your dad, let's just feed him and hopefully he passes out quick before he raises mitigated hell throughout the whole place. Takes on form, takes on shape, it affects everybody, it affects everything, it touches every aspect of life for that event. Him coming home was a whole event after she had worked all day long. After the whole family had gone to school, everybody's tired, and yet everybody has to walk on tippy toes around the toxic person. But like a good codependent, my mother was cutting off all of her branches. They were married 45 years, all of her branches. She cut them off every day. And he couldn't have afforded in the end to be a drunk if she hadn't supported him. Okay, let's keep going. So, let me find it. The problem, abnormal toxic relationships, is experiential in nature. If the problem is left to its own development, the problem will not or never self-cure or correct. The reality is the problem will grow and manifest into a variety of symptoms. So what began as a little seed now becomes exponential, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So your abnormal toxic relationship that you have with anything, work, drugs, money, marriage, children, Your abnormal toxic relationship, left unchecked, will not self-cure. It will not self-cure. It will not fix itself. You get a flat tire and you keep driving on it, you will eventually destroy the whole car. What was the name of that? Oh, just hit me. Every Which Way You Can, Every Which Way You Lose. Old Clint Eastwood movie where Grandma jumps in the tow truck, and it's got a Volkswagen behind it, and she drives 100 miles, 200 miles, and the thing finally gets down to where it's nothing but the hood left. You know, it just completely dissolved it, just completely turned it into nothing. And that's what happens if it goes unchecked. If the reality is you don't wake up and go, no. Take the apples, save some seeds, plant an orchard. I'm not just going to keep cutting off my branches and my trunk and destroying myself until I have nothing left to make you happy. You cannot ever, never, ever, ever, never, ever, 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 ever. I love telling this story. I was visiting a friend of mine in Memphis. I love telling this story. It's a fun story. Visiting a buddy of mine, played football at Memphis, and we went over to this girl's dorm, and she was from North Carolina, and she said, I picked up her hairbrush. You know, we were playing around, you know, singing or something in this dorm, and she looked at me, and she said, took that hairbrush away from me, and she said, boy, don't you ever, never, ever, ever, never touch my hairbrush again. I'm like, yes, ma'am. I'm not going to do that. That is very bad. When you fail, you cannot fix the predator. You cannot fix the toxic person. You can't fix them. I got to tell you, you got to sweep your own porch. You got it. That's the reality. You got to sweep your own porch. You can't clean them up. You bathe yourself the best. You don't bathe other people. Not as good. You can try. Back to the very first story, you're not God. You cannot fix that person. You can pray for them. You can love them. You can care about them. You can check them into the hospital. You can kick them out of the house. You can say this far and no more. It's very, very difficult for people. I can't. And when I did counseling when I was younger, and so the alcoholic would get kicked out, and the wife and the kids would be over here, and she would go, you know, because this is story after story after story after story, individual after individual, and I would go, okay, this is the deal. If he comes back now, yeah, he stopped drinking, but has he done anything to work towards healing? And she goes, no, not. Okay, he needs to go to counseling. He needs to go to AA every day. He needs to. And if he really wants to be back with his family and he's not willing to take some positive steps towards getting healed, then what makes you think he's not going to revert back to the same behavior when he gets back home? Because all he wants to do is get back home so he can go back to like it was. That's the reality. So your part, anybody's part, in stopping the toxic relationship. So they got out of Egypt. Moses broke them out. They got out of Egypt. They defeated Pharaoh's army. We all know the 10 Commandments and 10 plagues and all that. And then he goes up there in the mountains. Moses went up there 7 times. I don't know if you know that, but read your Bible. You'll find he went up there. And he came back down. He went back up there and came down with 10 Commandments. And the people in that 40 days had reverted back to their toxic behavior they walked out of Egypt with. Made a cow, started worshiping it, had a big orgy, did all those horrible bad things. And so what did God do? He said, some of you are going to die, and the rest of you are going to wander the desert for 40 years. And when they died off, when Hebrew had supplanted the Egyptian language with the worship of God was consistent, when things sincerely changed, then he said, now you can go into the land. I'm not sending a bunch of Egyptians into the land. And that's what he would have been sending them. He would have been sending them Hebrew Egyptians. He'd have been over there. And they would have brought all their paganness with them. And they still struggled with that. But the reality is, the person who you decide is toxic in your life did not get toxic one day. In one day. That didn't happen. They didn't go, okay, okay, anybody in here ever had food poisoning or gotten really sick like that? Okay, that happened. 24 hours later, you're better, and you ate bad snails or frog legs or, I don't know, raccoon butt or something. You ate something that really, really made you sick, but you got over it. But that was toxic. It was toxic to your system, and you got over it. But real toxic stuff, real interrelational toxic stuff happens over a long period of time. And you have to say yes many times. And you have to get mad about it and then accept it. Get mad about it and accept it. Get mad about it and accept it. And we have a couple ladies in here who are very, very, very familiar with counseling and teaching and with women in particular who have been sexually abused, who have been hurt by predators, who have had bad things happen in their life. And so how long does it typically take? I'm asking both of you. How long does it typically take for a person to recover from that?
Their perception of the level of toxicity as well as their willingness to accept reality that they're not living on their future.
Okay. Charlene, what? Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. So I can have a room of 1,000 people, a church, got 1,000 people in this church. And I can put one alcoholic on that end, and I can put one codependent on that end, and in a mixer in 30 minutes, they'll find each other. I can put one abused woman or abused man on this end, and I can put a predator on that end, and in 30 minutes, they will find each other. And they relapse. Different relationship, same result. Because if you don't self-heal, if you don't get healed, if you don't get, we'll use the word cured, if you don't get fixed, you're doomed to repeat it over and over again. And that's a reality. That's a reality. And it will destroy you. I mean, and you will end up a really, really broken person. And you get broken enough, then you're permanently damaged. And now, God is so merciful and so gracious and so good. He is so wonderful that he can take those broken pieces, he can take all that brokenness, and he can not just restore you, but use your damage to restore others. See, Satan thought he had me, raising me in that house of an alcoholic and codependent, workaholic. He had no idea what was going to come. Every time I've managed to lead somebody to Christ, which is a real privilege, which is a sincerely a grace-filled, God-sent, wonderful, incredible thing. And most of the time, like 99% of the time, with the exception of a few occasions, it has been done over a cup of coffee. Or it has been done in counseling, or it has been done in just a quiet moment with a person. Not from a pulpit. That's not, we're so much more effective. And remember, if you want to lead somebody to Christ, use your testimony. Don't use your brain. Don't use the Bible. Don't read them a bunch of scriptures. Tell them of the grace and glory of God in your life. Tell them, because that can't be refuted. Your testimony can't be refuted. They can call you a liar all they want, but if you're sharing what God has done for you, that's hard. That's hard to repeal. So, but back to this whole toxic thing. Let's read one more in here. Abnormal reality key. Abnormal reality begins and ends with relationships. Socially acceptable abnormality is a byproduct of abnormal relationships. So let's look at our society currently. I don't care what you think politically, but boys and girls sports is a product of society. It's not a product of anything else. It's a societal acceptance. Society has to accept that for it to become normal. Cutting the pee-pees off little 5-year-old boys because they played with the Barbie doll is a social thing. It's a political, social injustice. Okay? I don't know. You know, when I was in junior high, the biggest decision I had to make was what T-shirt to wear. That was my big, hey, what T-shirt's cool today? You know, because it's more important to be cool than anything else. And peer pressure is real in children, little children, big children, whatever, and they're smart. Boy, my 10-year-old granddaughter can take my cell phone and fix it. Wow, that's cool. They're smart. They are way ahead of us technologically. And this is what's amazing. We live in the most literate society in the history of the world. In the history of the world, everybody in the United States of America can read, at least somewhat. They can read stuff on the computer. They can read Google, or they can read whatever. Do they read Hawthorne and Glasser and I don't know, no, not really. I didn't either. Did any of you really, really, really enjoy reading when you were in high school or junior high? Okay, well, you're a weirdo. Most of us read what we had to. We read what we had to get a grade. That's what we did. We didn't read for the love of reading. Some people did. Some people did. Some kids did, and we made fun of them. It was natural. I mean, because when you're in junior high, I was much more interested in girls and football. I was not interested in, and football was more important than girls, too, in junior high. But this literate society, what's been published on the web is what they read. That's where they get their news. That's where they get their thing. This literate society has been so dumbed down by what is socially acceptable, and that socially acceptable stuff has led to abnormality. And we determined last night, normal is right here, where the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are, and that's normal. Outside of that circle is abnormal. Anything outside that circle is abnormal. So if you're in here, you're good. If you're out here, it's not good. That's why Paul said, be in the world, but not of the world. And that's what he meant. He said, you have to work over here. You got to work in the world, but stay in the center. Stay with Christ, because that will protect you more than anything else. It's when we start accepting things in this bigger circle, when we start accepting abnormality as okay, when we start accepting that abuse is okay, when we start accepting that alcoholism is okay, that a little bit of drugs are okay. I never dreamed, the normalization of pot. Like, really? Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's not a drug. It's a weed. We make rope out of it. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. It's not addicting. Puh. Can't tell you how many in doing, I did a lot of drug addiction counseling, and how many people came in and they were chronically hooked on pot. They were. And they would say things like, it makes me feel normal. And they were telling the truth because they had a true chemical imbalance and they needed medical treatment to get that back in whack. But it wasn't half as much fun as smoking pot with their buddies. So that's a toxic trait. You know, not only do you pursue your toxicity, but you indulge the toxicity, and then you create societies of toxicity. Drunks go to bars. Anybody ever been in a restaurant with a bar? Anybody ever seen a wine list or a drink list? And can I start you off with something? That's social. That's a socially acceptable thing. And then you can have 2 or 3 too many and walk out and get in your car and get pulled over and get a DWI. Huh. So is it socially acceptable or not? Wow. The same society that says it's okay to get drunk in the bar says it's not okay to drive while you're drunk, which is good. I mean, this is not a criticism, but what are you going to do, walk home? I mean, you can't even barely stand. And I think our society in itself is toxic. And so you have to protect yourself from the lies, from the disinformation, from the distruth. And, okay. So right now, in this moment, let's take a brief intermission, let you go to the potty and finish the food and get some coffee and get some stuff and shake hands with the pastor and go over there and go, hey, wow, you're not as bad as he said you were. It's good. You know? No, seriously. Everybody take a break for a minute. Come on. Get up, stretch your legs. I don't want you going to sleep yet. I'll tell you when it's time to nap. There we go. The truth is that Christians feel like we have to be in a certain box, mentally, physically, and spiritually around other people. And it truly limits us from getting help. See, do you remember when Jesus went over to the pool of Salome, and there's this guy laying on a pallet, and he's been there for many, many years. I don't know how, 30 years, 10 years, whatever it was, a long time. And his family carried him out there every day so he could beg for money. And he was crippled, and he was laying on this pallet. And Jesus said, "Get up and walk." He said, "Get up and walk." And he said, "Do you want to be healed? Get up and walk." And when he got up and walked, and Jesus said, "Take your pallet and go home, and don't tell anybody, go on." But you know, when he got up, he was still wearing the same clothes. He still stunk. He still had bad hair days. I mean, he had really bad hair days, bad beard days. You know, this guy couldn't take care of himself. I can't imagine how many times he soiled himself out there on that pallet, sitting there all day long, you know, crippled. And so the language and the education he had was as a beggar. So when he got up from this incredible miracle and hugged Jesus, and Jesus hugged him, he went, "Mah!" And he took his pallet and went home. His people were mad. They were angry because the money source just got cut off. He could now get new clothes. He could now go bathe. He could get himself into the pool. Oh, I can't tell you. Lots and lots of drunks I've dealt with in my lifetime. See, that's the other thing. Every time I helped a drunk not be a drunk, I've gotten even with Satan for my father. Yeah, isn't that great? I'm like, yeah, da-da-da-da-da-da. And so how many wives have called me or shown up in counseling with their husband and chewed me out and were mad at them for getting sober because they could have done that 20 years ago. They could have done it 10 years ago. They didn't have to put their family through this hell, you know. And now they're so instead of rejoicing over the brother who has repented, they're now mad. And that family was mad. So let's talk about mediation for a minute. I had some questions from some folks. I kind of wanted to answer it all at one time. So mediation is Christ is our mediator. Okay, so it's a very Christian ideology. The first mediators in America, not in the world, but in America, were the Amish and the Quakers. And so the Quakers don't believe in going to civil court, so they want to mediate. So mediation is when two people sit down with a neutral person and they work out a deal. That's as simple as it is. I mean, that's at the very heart and core of what mediation is. Now, in a legal standpoint, every contract you sign today, every lease agreement, every rental car agreement, every apartment agreement, every mortgage agreement, every light bill, everything you sign that has a contractual base, be it national, every credit card, be it national or be it state, has a clause in there that says you will mediate. Every insurance policy, everything has a clause in there that says you will mediate. You can sue us, but you automatically are going to be remanded to mediation. And the court's going to honor that because it was created in Harris County. I'll just talk about Harris County. The divorce courts were backed up by 2 to 2.5 years. And so when they created, in 1992, when they formalized mediation in the state of Texas, it became mandatory if you had a disputed divorce that you are remanded to mediation. And so what it did is it cut the divorce rate in half. Not the divorce rate of people getting divorced, but what it did is it cut the time because the courts were so backed up. And people were like, look, this has been 2 years. I'm ready to move on. You know, I need child support. I need blah, 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 blah. Not temporary orders. I mean, so, you know, I want to get married again. You know, so it created a legal avenue outside of the court. And then the court, if you have a mediated agreement, I don't know when and if you've ever been in court, but it's like traffic court or something. Everybody wants to plead guilty and come on up here. Okay, you know, your fine is cut in half, go pay it. Ta-da, you know, done. Everybody else who wants to argue, you're going to go over here, and we're going to get out of here about 9 o'clock tonight. You know, so, oh no, I'm going to join them, you know, kind of thing. And so mediation people go to the front of the line. You got a deal worked out, you go to the front of the line. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter if it's small claims court, big claims court, federal court, any court where there's a civil action going on, and you have mediated your deal with a mediator. I did not say the word attorney. I said mediator. And ta-da. So we at the seminary offer, I've had, I don't know how many hours in mediation training. I honestly don't. You're mandatory. You've got to do your first 40, then you got to do your 30, then you do another 10. And this is for different stages. So like the first 40 is basic civil mediation. It's just basic. Everybody wants to be a mediator, including attorneys. Just because you're an attorney doesn't make you a mediator. You got to go through mediation training. Marriage and family is what we're doing now. We're working on that sort of. And that's what the 15th is all about, you know, where you'd get your piece of paper saying, I are mediator. But you can't go mediate marriage and family until you do that 40 over here. And so why would you want to get a master's in mediation? Well, I don't know. You can go to a soothsayer down the street and they can lay their hands on you and give you an herbal basket and say you're healed of cancer. Or you can go to an oncologist and they can treat you because they have degrees from Johns Hopkins and they have all the right medicine and they can do surgery and they can do all those things and check you in the hospital. That's the reason why you'd want a master's in mediation, because people are going to go, what makes you qualified to do this? You know, why, who are you? And in all honesty, we do great training. I mean, the training you get out of that, you just come out. Now, can you make money as a mediator? Absolutely 100%. Can you make money as a mediator? Let me say that again. You make money as a mediator. Not everybody is suited for mediation because you are there to help this disagreement come to a resolution. You're not there to fix them. You're not there to fix them because they're already in a dispute. Now, they have a choice. They can do it cheap with you, or they can pay attorneys. And let's face it, most people, the average cost of a simple civil divorce in the state of Texas today is about $10,000 to $15,000 if you have attorneys. I mean, both people, $7,500 a piece, $10,000 a piece, if it's a decent attorney, and then you have to do all the work. You got to do all your own discovery for your stuff. You got to show up with your taxes and your inventory and then every phone call you make is another $50 and that kind of thing. Where as a mediator, you can sit down once or twice for $500 a session and hammer out a deal and take it to the court and paper it. And so you have a deal. And then this last thing I'm going to say about mediation, it is a Christian form of reality. And as a mediator, you're in control. You're in complete control of that session. There is nothing, you can't be sued. You can't be sued unless you break an ethical code like sleeping with one of the people or you have a conflict of interest, you own part of their business or something like that. You cannot be compelled to testify by anybody about that. Now, if this guy or this gal is selling drugs, that has nothing to do with the divorce, or it has nothing to do with the construction lawsuit. It has nothing to do with that. So just like any counselor, any doctor, or anybody, or a child is being abused, okay, you are compelled to do that. But beyond that, if it's dealing with this case, you cannot be subpoenaed to testify. In fact, it's illegal. A judge cannot make you testify under any circumstance. So you're bulletproof, and you are also insulated from that. And as a matter of fact, we don't even let people, they can't record it, they can't take notes, they can't leave with any notes, they can't, because this is strictly confidential, and it's only mediation. I don't even let attorneys in the room. They can sit out if they want to bring their attorney, great, you're going to sit out there, we're not going to mediate. Because all they're doing is collecting evidence to go to trial. Nope. So, and they mess things up. So anyway, so mediation, what's your average fee if you're any good? You know, for an hour, $300. Couple hours, $500, couple of sessions, you know. So how many do you have to do a week to make a living? I don't know. How many do you want to do? It's a business. And who is a client? Everybody. Everybody's a client. Anybody ever gotten in a dispute with an apartment or a landlord or a contractor or an insurance company or just keep on adding up, more or less a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or something or a car dealership? Because in that contract you sign, it says mediation is required. And so guess what? You get to pick mediators, you know? And so typically what a court will have is a list of mediators, or an attorney will have a list of mediators, or there will be a list of mediators, and you pick one off the list, kind of thing. And so it's like any other business. The more you advertise yourself, the more you hand out your business cards. And as a Christian, you have a leg up. Because, here we go. If I hand my mediation card to the pastor, and he has a couple come in and go, look, pastor, we're thinking about getting divorced, and we're real serious about this. We filed, and la, la, la. And the court said, we have to mediate. Can you do it? And he goes, no, because he's smart. He's not going to do a mediation. He's going to hand him my card or your card or somebody else's card and go, Christian mediator. This guy or this gal will use spiritual wisdom, not just legal wisdom. And I typically, like 99% of the time, if I do a mediation, I don't do very many anymore. I just don't have time. But I start off in prayer. I go, I'm going to pray. You can pray with me, but you don't have to pray. Don't care. Doesn't make any difference. So next on the 15th, when we do our class out in Katy, we're going to go through some real nuts and bolts of marriage and family mediation. And I will show you and coach you in how to rawly manipulate people into having a good quality conversation. These two people have been at odds. They're angry. Their money's involved. There's kids involved. There's stuff involved. And they haven't seen eye to eye. And I got to tell you, every now and then, not all the time, I would say 1 out of 5, historically, they sometimes turn a corner after they get it all out. And they say, maybe we shouldn't think about it. And they go, well, look, we want to get together again, but we want to talk about reconciliation. We want to talk about getting back together. Yeah, because the fact is, say you had a lousy marriage. Okay, I get that. You had a lousy companionship. You had a lousy whatever. But you don't have to have a unchristian divorce. You don't have to have, being divorced is not Christian. I know that. But the fact is, you can still act like Christians. You can be respectful. You can be loving. Because if there's children involved, that's who you need to keep your eye on. What's the best for them? How does Christmas look? What does Thanksgiving look like? So you can work out these details in mediation. Okay, so that's enough about mediation. But if you want to get your piece of paper, you got to show up for this extended thing on the 15th. And the address is on here. Do not call Faith West. They don't know anything. We rent space and have for all these years. And, we're going to order lunch, Subway. It's going to be a cost like $5 a piece, something like that. I don't know what it is. Box lunch, one of their turkey sandwiches. But my email's on there, so you can email me or you can text me. don't call me because I don't really like people. So, okay, and just let me know. Kind of want to get a head count, and the fact you're coming, and so I can be watching for you, because where our building is, here's the main campus, and our building's kind of across the parking lot. And so unless you know it's there, you're going to be driving around going, where are you, where are you, where are you, kind of thing. And it's a nice building once you get inside, but we share it with the FFA program. So there's a cow out there sometimes. It's great. Okay, so back to where we were. I don't like combination locks because I'm no good at them and never have been. But, 16-digit combination lock. So if I gave you, you're not any good at them either, but I hate them. 3 to the left, back, and I always miss it, and I have to do it 3 or 4 times. But a 16-digit, so when I was at A&M, I was taking physics very badly, I might add. I asked one of the geniuses in there, I said, what's the sequence and series? How many combinations are there? And he came back with something. He went, like 1,520 zillion, just unlimited combinations on a 16-digit lock. So, if you do the math on that, if you divide that 72 years later, or 80 years later, you would have tried all the combinations. If you did it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's all you did to try to find the combination. And knowing my luck, it would be the last one that I did. Yes. So that's that reality. That's a hardcore truth. Now, if I gave you the 5 digits and the right, left, whatever thing you had to do to it, turn 3 times, tune back twice, the thing you do with combination locks, how long would it take you to open it? Yeah, a minute. Maybe if you're like me, 4 or 5 minutes, I screwed up twice, but the third one I get it. Okay, so, and in that box that the thing was locking was this truth, was this wonderful, incredible truth. How often could you go back now that you know the combination and unlock it? Ever, forever, right? Yeah, as long as that was a lock. That was the truth. That was the key. Why would you try any other combination? So it is with Christ. So it is with Christ. Once you know this truth, then you simply have to rinse and repeat. The shampoo bottle thing. You just go back and do it again, 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 and open up that treasure box. I in my imagination, when I come into the kingdom, and God is going to show me Jesus, I'm walking down, and there's this big pile of treasures and blessings and incredible stuff. Just, man. And I'm going to go, what's that? Because he's walking me over to my shack, the one at the very end of the road. And I go, what's that? He goes, that's all the stuff you didn't pray for. That's all the stuff you could have asked for. That's all the stuff you could have walked in faith, not by sight, but by faith, and could have been added unto you, and added unto your children and unto your life, because you didn't listen. It said, ask and you shall receive. Ask. Because God is unexpectable. He is unbelievable. He has all of this stored up for you and stored up for me. And we are so focused on the minor things. We're so focused on the trivial things. We're so focused on the day-to-day things. Jesus, he said this over and he said, don't worry about what you're going to eat. How many of you have conversations every day about what you're going to eat? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, what's for lunch? Squeet. let's go eat, squeak. Yeah. And so we focus on this stuff. And in relationships, in healthy relationships, we focus on the minors. We focus on, well, why didn't you pick up your socks? Why are your shoes in the living room? Why, whatever it is, the dishes aren't washed before you go to bed, or the bed's not made up when you get out of it, are the. I'm not saying those things aren't important, because if they're important to you, then they're legitimate. They are legitimate. But are they worth creating problems and conflict? Now, let's segregate children from adults. Okay. So teaching children to take their clothes to their room, or to the dirty clothes, or fold a towel, or pick up their socks is different than a grown man coming in, sitting down in the easy chair and kicking off his shoes, and you get mad because his shoes are there. That's a different deal. That's a complete different deal. That's not the same thing. So let's segregate children, because children, there's a place, just like in the book, where we say no. No. And that's a big word, no. Does anybody, I don't care how much you love animals, doesn't make any difference. You go in somebody else's house and their giant Great Dane jumps up on you and licks you and jumps all over you, and the other 5 cats claw you, and is anybody like that? No. I mean, and it doesn't matter. It's not about love of animals. That's not it. That's not a condemnation of dogs or cats or chickens or whatever it is you're raising, squirrels. It is about people don't all enjoy the same things. People don't all look at discipline the same way. People don't all have the same gravity in their body towards stuff. There's foods you don't like. That's okay. That's all right. There's foods that you do like, and that's okay too. How many of the foods that we eat are probably not good for us, but we still do it? Some of it's out of necessity. I travel a lot. I really try not to eat fast food. I try hard not to do that, because it is not healthy. But I don't always have time to sit down for a good meal, and so I'm forced to drive through and get us something, just so my sugar doesn't crater. And it's like, okay. So, and you have to do the same thing. But let's go to the rule of 52 and talk about that for just a minute, because we talked about money yesterday when I said, if you had $10 a week, that would be $520 at the end of the year. If you save $10 a week, $10 a week, 52 weeks. $100, wow, $5,200 into 52 weeks. Say do that for 20 years, you got $120,000 in the bank. That's not including interest. So we established that. So I'm going to ask you a very basic question, because this is what reality therapy is. This is really the core of it. If I said, how do you lose weight? What are the 2 things you're going to tell me? Diet. No? You don't agree? Okay. Stop eating? Okay, 1 bite at a time. But it's diet and exercise. I mean, that's a standard answer. I mean, okay, so if everybody kind of agrees with that as a standard answer, we're just going to go with that. Why don't we do it? Wow, now that's a different question, isn't it? Why don't we do it? Well, then we come up with those 5 conflicts. Well, we've got children, got money, got time, got work. We go through that. Then we have Thanksgiving, then we have Christmas, and then we have New Year's, and then we're rolling into spring break, and we don't have, so my diet goes right out the window then. I have to eat fudge at Christmas. It's just tradition, and 2 fruitcakes. Yeah, absolutely. I love fruitcake, but I don't eat it anymore. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, believe me, I've been eyeballing the donut going, back Satan. No. So the reality is, this is reality. You know the answers to your problems. You know the cure, diet and exercise. But what eludes you is the how-to. How do we get there? It's only 10%. It's just 10%. You know the solution. It's same thing with toxic relationships. You know, I need to get out of that relationship. I should have never gotten into that relationship. And you talk about toxic relationships, and you know the solution, but it's like the diet and exercise, you don't do it. You don't pull the trigger. You just don't. You keep wasting the money. You keep buying Starbucks. You know? You can make multiple pots of coffee for that $8 you spent on that one drink. And so we pay, okay, you go into Stop and Go and you get a bottle of water for $2, $3, $4, whatever it is, you know, whatever you're buying. And then you go to the grocery store and you can get it for a case for like $4 or $5, whatever that is. Or you can go to Costco or Sam's and you can get like a big old case for like $2.50, you know, whatever they're selling it for. But each step is more inconvenient. You pay for that convenience. You pay for toxicity because it's easy to stay in it. You stay in toxicity because it's just easy and it's inviting. Toxicity is sexy. It sells. Toxicity sells. That's why there's a whole world addicted to porn, because toxicity sells. It's advertising itself every day in every way it possibly can, to the absolute point that now I was listening to a debate. It wasn't a debate. It was really a lady who has this advocacy group, and it's against boys in women's sports. I mean, this is her whole lobbying group. This is what she's doing. And she was a national champion gymnast. She was a this and a that, and on and on and on. I mean, she's very famous. I never heard of her, but I don't watch gymnastics. And she's going from state to state filing lawsuits, you know, against the legislature and the governors and the whatever, and, you know, and this advocacy group. And her point was real simple. When the rest, there's a whole group of women athletes who believe like she does, but they're scared to stand up because they don't want the blowback. They don't want the unpopularity. They don't want to lose their endorsements. They don't want the consequences from the college. They don't want the backlash from the Olympic Committee or NCAA, on and on and on, or even the club sports. So it's very politicized now, and until a majority stands up and says, this is not socially acceptable, it will stay toxic. And so socially acceptable abnormality has created toxicity in our lives. All these socially acceptable things out there have created toxicity where Christians are condemned for being Christians. The government just pulled $440 million from Columbia University in funding. And the reason they did that is because Hamas, the Muslim student body, are openly abusing the Jewish students on campus. And there are a lot of Jewish students in this campus. In fact, they comprise about a third of the entire student body. And they can't go to class, they can't drive their cars up there because they're getting scratched and keyed and burned and everything and dumped over, and they're scared to live in their dorms because of all the attacks that have gone on, brutal attacks by these pro-Hamas students. And I don't know all of them that are Muslim. They could just be students who are sympathizing with the Palestinian effort. Well, so now, and Columbia was doing nothing, absolutely nothing, to protect the Jewish students. 6 months ago, a young black woman was attacked on the campus. And they did an all-out dragnet. Within 24 hours, they found the attackers, and they had them incarcerated, and they're now sitting someplace in jail, okay? But because these Jewish students represented the world of religion, the world of Christianity, the world of Hebrew, they were being completely ignored by the university and the university police, and all these horrible things were happening. So socially acceptable
toxicity is wrong. African American people fought for years for equality. For years and years and years in this country. Until now, I believe we've achieved it. I, at least in Texas, I don't know about the rest of the country, but I don't know. I have as many African American friends and Hispanic friends, and I own a construction company. They all tell me what to do. It's great. I'm serious. And we don't judge each other by the color of our skin. We judge each other by, do we get paid? That's how we judge each other. I mean, it's like, when are we going to get paid? You know, you can call yourself boss all you want. When are we going to get paid? So, but we have come to a point in human history where our opinions are being driven by news and by the internet and by socially accepted toxic behavior, even though we know it's wrong. And the people who know it's wrong, they're afraid to speak up because they don't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose their employer. They don't want to get kicked out of school. They don't want to be ostracized by their classmates because of inconvenient political truth, or whatever you want to call it, social truth. Because it's not all political. It's people being stupid, just flat out stupid. And as Christians, we don't get that luxury. We don't get to be prejudiced. When I was a freshman in college, I finally figured out what I was prejudiced against, because I lived in the athletic dorm, and we had men from every sport, every race, every ethnicity in the world, and I figured it out one day. I'm prejudiced against stupid, because we had some really stupid people. I mean, it was stupid. I mean, I remember talking to this one guy. I said, "How long you been here?" He goes, "Well, I've been a senior for about 6 years." Wow, okay. That's got to be something illegal in that, you know, playing football. But my whole point is that as Christians, we do not have that luxury to succumb to the socially acceptable toxic formula that the world gives us. We just don't have that luxury. Jesus said very clearly, he said, they're going to know you by your love. That's the only socially acceptable thing we have is love. I mean, that's socially acceptable and not abnormal love. Sex. I don't think, God could have let us reproduce by shaking hands. Seahorses roam around with their babies in their mouth. Frogs lay eggs, and then tadpoles hatch, and birds sit on eggs, and animals don't have this deep, abiding physical love. Humans are unique in our ability to have this expression of physical love. And so what did Satan do? He picked that as one of the core parts of creating toxic abuse. Physical abuse, mental abuse, spiritual abuse. Sex becomes a cornerstone of destructive behavior in a relationship. It becomes a cornerstone. And the reality is that human beings change. Freud said two things that were really intelligent, and only two. He said, one, we grow up and we change. Okay, like we didn't know that. And sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. That was the other thing he said. And I believe both of those things. But God created us sexual beings. He created us with that need. That is an absolute natural need. And he created us with physical desire. He created us with puberty. He created us with this ability to have this connection between men and women. He created this wonderful, incredible ability to have a deeper relationship with this one person on earth, and that's how it's supposed to be, one man, one woman kind of thing. And I realized divorce happens, so it can be one man, another woman. So that's not up for debate. That's what happens. But God gave us the same need. He gave us this need, and that need transfers all through our life. The only thing that changes is we change. We physically change. We go from having babies to not having babies. And there is a reason that young people have babies. Because I can tell you, I don't want babies. I love my grandbabies. But, whoo, man, 2, 3, 4 hours with them, and I am ready for a nap. Man, that can wear me out faster than anything I know. And so God intended for young people to have kids. That was his plan. We are intelligently designed. We are intelligently designed, not randomly designed. So every need you have, every single need you have, from being hungry to needing intimacy to needing love to needing to survive. Survival is uniquely inherent to all men. All men, all places, for all time. Survival. She almost fainted over a wasp. She wanted to survive. You know, some of you will absolutely run out of the house if you see a cockroach or a snake or a spider. I'm not real crazy about spiders, but I don't faint. We have this tendency to want to survive. Cockroach or spider? Him. Wasp? Wow, okay. So the reality is, with this survival tendency, God's not surprised that you want to live. He's not surprised. I've unfortunately, my first year in ministry, this was really interesting. We were working with a nursing home, big time, ministering to them and going down there and doing some things as an outreach in the community. And I did 5 funerals for our members, and I did 25 funerals for the nursing home. First year in senior pastorism, that's almost one a week. I mean, you know, and actually sometimes it was like 2 down there at the nursing home kind of thing. And I was present on 2/3 of those, you know, because they would call me and say, you know, Pastor Tom, so-and-so, you know them, and they're leaving this life. And so I would go down. They didn't have a chaplain or anything, and I would pray with the family if they were there, and I'd pray with the person and whatever. And every single one who had any consciousness to them at all, a lot of times they'd slipped into a coma or whatever. They were gone, or they just didn't wake up. But the rest of them were clinging to life up to the last second. They were grasping for life. They were holding on to life. Remember the last time you were in a swimming pool when you were a kid or something, you went down 2 or 3 times and you were about to drown, and dad, mom, friends pulled you out? And that's the worst feeling in the world, when you're going down and you can't breathe and you're struggling. And that's the feeling I got from these people. And the thing about these people, and this is one of the things we teach in our chaplaincy idea, is they were teachers, and they were accountants, and they were doctors and lawyers, and they were pharmacists, and they were farmers, and they were mechanics. In their they raised families, they had grandchildren, and now here they are, bedridden and pooping on themselves. They've lost their dignity, and now they're losing their life. Wow. That's not toxic. That's reality. They've gone from majoring on minors to now they just want to live. They just want to breathe. However inconvenient it is to everybody else. Most selfish thing in the world is a child. And a baby is the ultimate selfish thing. They don't care when they wake up, when they want to get fed, they want to get fed now. Right now. And when they want to get changed, they want to get changed right now. And children learn to go to the bathroom. That's like freeing. It frees you from diapers, and it frees you from, that's important to learn Because I've told my grandchildren as they begin that process, I look at them and I go, well, you either need to learn this or your dating life is going to be very short. That's true. Okay. So let's go back over. So we were talking about a combination lock and how you go to it. So on page 38, that's where we are, page 38. So we have survival, love, power, freedom, and fun. These are Glasser's original 5 things. This is how it all began. This is the basis of it. And so survival, the individual needs to have a relationship, a physical instinct. So survival is not just about not dying. Survival is about community. It's about having relationships in that community. You're not living on a desert island. Nobody is. You all have relationships with somebody or something, past, present, or future. And not all of those relationships are good. And not all those relationships are bad. Some of them are neutral. If I buy something from H-E-B and the young lady checks me out, a young man, whatever, that is a neutral relationship. I go, thank you, they go, thank you, have a nice day. You know, give them my money, I take my basket, and I leave. That's a neutral relationship. But it's a survival relationship because that relationship has to do with putting food in my basket and them getting paid. So they're surviving money. I'm surviving food, which is money, too. It all translates into money because I get a receipt saying that costs that much, that costs that much, that costs that much. So it's all money. All right, number 2, love. The toxic predator manipulates all relationships. Love is an object and is used to control. Period. Love is an object. It is not an emotion. It is not a feeling. Now, it may come across as that, but it is not. It is an object to them. When you enter an abortion clinic, they are forbidden from using the word baby. They use the word fetus or tissue. They minimize life. How many of you ladies have been through some type of defensive training where you're told if you're being attacked or a potential rapist, you're told to say, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and even use your first name to personalize who you are. That you're not an object anymore. You're no longer this predator's victim. You're now a human being. Well, it's the same thing with the predator. Toxic predator has to dehumanize you to control you. They have to turn you, and they use words like bitch. That's their word, something like that. They have to use a word that takes your femininity away or takes your masculinity away. For men, it's different. When the toxic predator is a woman, and believe me, there are plenty of toxic predators who are women, they use words like you're a failure. You're not decent. You're so stupid. They say things that are extremely demeaning. You'll never be a success. Every idea you've ever had is just ridiculous. You're just like, they pick out your worst failure friend, and you go, you're worse than them. You're worse than old Bubba over here. So they paint that picture of objectivity. So you're dealing with a predator when they can turn you into an object and not allow you to be human, not allow you to be an individual, not allow you to be who God created. And that is so important, a child of God. Because that's my answer. I'm a child of God. I used these COVID people who went absolutely Nazi with their, enforcement of masks and everything else, and all the other stupid things that people behaved like. And they would chide me if I didn't wear a mask, and I would look at them and I go, look, let me tell you something. Appointed unto man once to die, and after that the resurrection. So I'm good. Because when it's my time, I'm done. And until then, I'm bulletproof. Got it? You're like, where'd you get that from? Well, let me show you. Okay, so number 3, power. The toxic predator grooms the victim and installs a negative self-worth. Keep them down, keep them down, keep them down. So the toxic predator, and predator is a really good word for it. They're seeking out a certain type of individual, a certain type of person who is very codependent, who's like the tree in the book. They feel the need to say yes to everything. They feel the need to try to encourage whatever it is you want to do, and are willing to be demeaned, are willing to be objectified, are willing to accept whatever insults, abuse, slurs. The other thing that the grooming process is they want to isolate you from the rest of your family, friends, children, everybody. They want to get you away. They want to keep you down, keep you down, keep you down. And the only time that they ever act normal is when these other people show up and they look at you and go, you're crazy. They're not, they're a nice person. They're a nice guy. They're a nice gal. What are you talking about? They're funny. And then the minute they leave, they're back to, I can't believe you said that. Yeah. The other thing that goes on is they get just to the point where you're ready to defend yourself. I'm not talking about yelling at them or fighting or whatever. I mean, like you're ready to pack your bags and you're out of there. Then they flip the script. They flip that script, and they're so squishy-ishy nice. They're so wonderful. They're so benevolent. They're so, let me go wash your car and fill it up with gas, and let me buy you a new dress, or let me go out and get you some new boots. Let me cook you a meal, or honey, let me rub your shoulders. This is men and women. This is both the same. And then in your mind, you're like, well, okay, maybe, start making excuses for them. How do you know you're dealing with a toxic person? Because you're always making excuses for them. And the tree was happy, but not really. And you keep all the anger inside. You keep all the fury that you really feel about life, and you keep all that depressiveness. And so you start eating, or you start drinking, or you start going to the doctor and taking Xanax. You start, you're constantly depressed, and it just becomes this overwhelmingness and your failure to leave. And then it cycles back, and you get right to the brink of where you're going to leave, and they will never, ever, ever, never, hairbrush, let you get help. That's why that book, though, I have it. Don't buy that online. Don't buy it online. The publishing company went broke, and they went bankrupt, and some Asian company, somebody bought up all the inventory, and they're selling them for $20 a book. And I have a brand new one coming out, Unanticipated Chicken. That's all about toxic behaviors. It is the whole book of what is in CCRT, but it's just focused on that. And I give them to women's shelters, Star of Hope Mission. I give them to rehab hospitals. I give them to lots and lots of places, pregnancy help centers, on and on and on. And so the new one coming out is going to have a couple extra chapters. It's going to be focusing a lot on narcissist and OCD, and the combination of the two. And it has study guide questions and things in it. It'll be cheap. It'll be like $8, $9, $10, whatever we can get it down to cost for. It'll be good. Hold it up. Hold it. Let them see. Unanticipated Chicken. The reason I named it the Unanticipated Chicken is because toxic predators are so arrogant. And I explain it in the book. And tell people, just leave it out on the coffee table. Just leave it on the coffee table, because they'll go, what's that? And you'll go, it's a book about cooking chicken. And they'll go, you can't cook. What are you reading it for? You're too stupid to read. Just leave it out there in plain sight. They'll never figure it out, because they're not going to pick it up. But if they thought you were trying to get help, if they thought you were trying to recover from your toxic situation, they would throw it in the fire. They'd throw it away. They would beat you. They would do whatever. So that's how I came up with the name. Unanticipated Chicken. Isn't that great? It's a great chicken on there, too. But it's the truth. They have to keep you away from help. They don't want you to go to counseling. They don't want you to go to church. They don't want you to do anything that would help identify them as a source of the predator. And in today's society, there are equal number of women predators and men predators. And so one of the reasons the book is valuable is because it's neutral. Back to being a mediator, I write it from a neutral voice. So it could apply to either or. And the minute you think it's talking about a woman as a victim, I flip it and it's a man who's the victim. And the minute you think it's a man being the victim, it's a woman in there. So it's kind of transgender. That was funny. Okay, you people laugh on cue. Okay, but it's coming out, and if you know people who are in very bad, volatile, horrible, bad, evil, no good, rotten situations, give it to them. You know, hand it over to them. And everybody in this room, I don't care who you are, everybody has known people, or you've been near it, or you've been involved in it, or something has happened in your life where you have bumped head on into a predator. Bill Clinton was a predator. Okay? I mean, still is, I guess. I don't know. Jeffrey Epstein was a predator. Okay. These are just famous predators that I know. So they occupy, I don't care if it's the highest office in the land or a prison. One of the sad things about our statistics from sexual abuse, okay, and physical abuse, and mental abuse, the majority of our statistics come from prisons, because the rest of the world, if they're in counseling, it's confidential, or they don't want to be identified and they don't want to talk about it. So the statistics we mostly know come from people who have been convicted, because when they give up their story, they get to go have food or air condition or comfort or whatever, you know, while they're being interviewed by clinicians and psychiatrists and psychologists and sociologists and people writing books about this stuff. And so our hardcore facts, and it's outrageous the amount that come out of women's prisons and men's prisons. And that's not even the whole population. There's a whole nother population out here that have been abused who aren't even identified and never get to talk about it and never get to be, it's just unbelievable. I was involved for several years in my progression of counseling. I was involved with foster care. And the majority of the kids came out of highly abusive situations. And you never know about the abuse, because there's always multiple different daddies or multiple different mamas, and you got stair-step children. You got a 3-year-old, you got a 5-year-old, you got an 8-year-old, you got a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. And until the 13-year-old sounds the alarm, the abuse goes on. So you find out it then, and then all the kids, you know, get removed, because they've all been abused. They just haven't been caught yet by whatever. And I can tell you, I'm not going to. I still have nightmares over some of this stuff that went on. Just horrific. Okay, so power, freedom. Number 4, we're still on page 38. Freedom. Toxic predator controls the victim's reality, and free will instilling control. So we talked about that. That we kind of covered. And then number 5, fun or joy. The normal reality of a victim is replaced with abnormality, and the toxic cycle of life events perpetuate. Okay, so each person has 5 basic core needs. So what happens, and I'm going to use foster care as the example because I could give you live human examples. So the 13-year-old, not only do they begin to scream out about the sexual abuse, physical abuse, whatever abuse it is from the mother, father, whatever, but they've now begun to groom the younger siblings. And so they're grooming them, so they've not only become a victim, but they're now a predator. And the cycle progresses. And so a lot of times, we have to take the older children and completely separate them from the younger children because they're not going to stop unless they're forced to stop the sexual predator behavior or the abuse or whatever it is. And so you segregate the children, and the court views that very dimly. They want to keep families together. It sounds good for getting reelected as judges. And it's a very, very difficult situation out there. And so we get some statistics from foster care, but once again, this is all minors and it's all confidential. So it really can't be let out to the public, all the bad things that go on and stuff. And so it perpetuates itself. And there's I was in class with a lady who we had to do family trees of abuse and alcohol. Mine was all alcoholism. Had 1849, 13 brothers came from Scotland and into Galveston. That's how my family got here. And they were all drunks. We weren't the smart ones who bought like Allen's Landing and farm stuff. We're the ones who laid out in the ditches in the back of the bars and stuff, and got hung and shot things and did stuff like that. So, but our alcoholism, and I know this is hard to believe, but it goes all the way back to about the 13th century. Isn't that incredible? Yeah, that's found. That one side of the family. I'm sure the rest of the family were drunks too, just don't have that kind of history. So it perpetuates itself. I mean, it really, the predator mentality, the socially acceptable, let's get drunk mentality, the whole it perpetuates itself. And so one of the things we do as Christians is we go, stop. We're born again. And because we're born again, we have the ability. Now, are you asking yourself, so what can I do about it? No? You know what you can do about it? You don't know? I don't know. I do know. Little boy was on the beach, and he was humming starfish into the sea. Just, because the tide had gone out and it trapped thousands of starfish. He was throwing them back out in the water, one at a time. He just throwing there, standing there all day long. He's just standing there. And this guy's watching him. He's watching him do that. And so he walked up to the little boy and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm throwing starfish back out in the sea." And he asked him, "Well, there's thousands of them. What difference will it make?" He picked up another starfish and he said, "It's going to make a lot of difference to this one." What can you do? One family, one child, one day. That's a rule of 52. So if you want to write a book, you want to write a book? Okay, yeah, I'll write a book. And you wrote 1 page a day for a whole year. You'd have 365 pages written at the end of the year. That's almost like War and Peace. Isn't that amazing? What can you do? Clean out that closet 1 box at a time. By the end of the month, you might have that whole closet cleaned out if you did it 1 box at a time. What if you applied that to reaching people for Christ? When I became senior pastor guy out there at Believers Baptist all those years ago, and I mean, we were out. This is how the church actually got built. Somebody gave a piece of dirt to a larger church in Katy, and the Baptist builder guy said, "Why don't we build a church there? We got the land." I mean, this is cow pasture. I mean, it's out in the middle of the sticks in just rural homes, just sort of. Wow. So when I got there, and Dr. Bassanio tricked me into going there, it had 11 people. 11 people. So all those years later, we were rocking about 275 people, and about 80% of them came in by baptism. And you know how I did it? God did it. I didn't did it. 1 family at a time. one person at a time, one family at a time, one handshake at a time, and then taught that to the disciples, to the daskalos, to the elders, to the ladies, to everybody, and then looked around and go, well, what's bad in this community? And so there was one drunk, and I took his gun away from him so he couldn't kill himself. Got him in AA, whatever. And then when he got sober and became a Christian, I said, okay, let's start an AA. And so I said, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to have child care, and we're going to have no smoking. Wow. We had 250 people showing up on Thursday nights out there with those two things, child care and no smoking. Isn't that incredible? Because do you know how many non-smoking, well, now it's different with the law, but how many AAs in Houston and Harris County and Fort Bend, wherever in Montgomery County have child care? 0. We were the first, maybe in the state of Texas. And it was hugely successful. And you know how many people came to Christ through that program? How many people got saved and how many people got healed? One drunk, James May. I didn't do it. He did it. Just an old drunk. He was an old drunk truck driver. And so he just kept going and telling people about it. He'd go to the bars and he'd tell them about it. He'd pass out flyers, put them on the cars. And pretty soon it just, wow, isn't that something? I can't to this day think of how many families were probably saved because of that. Well, so let's keep on. What time is it? Anybody know? What to 12? 11:40. We're almost there. Okay, so I promise you we'd knock off at noon, because I see some of you are finally waking back up. Good. That's good. I like that. Hey, I put more important people to sleep. I want you to know that. I have. So turn, if you will, to page 76. This will be our last kind of entry in the whole process. And up there at the top, there's a reality key. So every chapter kind of has reality keys, which are kind of a summary of that chapter. So it kind of gives you an eyeball of what you're looking at. So God has a plan. If you're walking in his plan, you are going in the right direction. If part of God's perfect plan for you is for you to lead the desert life experience. That's a whole nother teaching, but I want to assure you, if you want to go to Galveston and you get on a plane going to China, you're not going to end up in Galveston. So if God is sending you in a direction and you go in a different direction, just think about old Jonah and all the wonderful things that happened to him until he got on God's plan. And part of God's plan is for you to not be on the sidelines, for you not to be idle. Everybody, thank goodness, everybody doesn't have to get up in a pulpit, and everybody doesn't have to write a book or lead a workshop. The majority of people who have come to Christ, there was a Sunday school teacher, and he invited this barefoot boy in overalls from this farm to church. And he'd come by every Sunday and pick him up, take him to Sunday school and church, take him home and feed him sometimes. And that boy grew up to be Billy Graham, There was a Sunday school teacher who walked into a shoe store, went back in the storeroom, and led Dwight L. Moody to Christ. Wow. Maybe that's all you have to do. My dad didn't know it, but his alcoholism drove me into the arms of the Lord. He didn't know that. So God took everything that Satan intended for evil, and he made it for good. Isn't that good? Oh, amen. So the desert experience, if you're in a desert place right now, or if you've been in a desert place, or you know somebody's in a desert place, these are the facts. It will harden or humble your body, mind, and spirit. It will either harden you, make you mad, or it will humble you. Spiritually blind you, or it will give you spiritual wisdom. It will weaken you, or it will make you ruggedly strong. It will harden your heart or install passion and love and hope. The desert experience is an acceptable and normal experience for all Christians. Wow, isn't that interesting? Jesus was not immune from the desert experience. He physically went into the desert, and he had to do battle with Satan. That's a very interesting study. The guarantee of the desert experience, it will change you. I told that story last night about us going to, Haiti, and that was a life-changing experience for me. So I'd like to conclude with one other life-changing experience. And so I've maintained friends with not as many now as I once did, but with pastors through the years. And especially when we were all first kind of out of Bible college or whatever, blah, 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 and seminary and stuff. And so one of my buddies, he was actually ministering down near Friendswood. He was at a church. I don't remember. I remember his name was Wesley. And he called me, and he said, I have a lady who desperately needs some counseling. She doesn't have any money, but she's in a lot of trouble. Would you mind seeing her? And I said, sure, I'll see her. You know, I was using an office at a local church to do some counseling, and so she drove all the way up from where she was to there. And she came in very abruptly. She said, hi, I'm so-and-so. And she said, I want you to look at something. And she took out this 8.5 by 11 picture of this little boy. Beautiful little boy. And 8, 9 years old, something like that. And she said, look, we have been faithful at our church. We built a room on our house for missionaries to stay. We help tithe, and she vacation Bible school and Sunday school and going on mission trips and just, she and her husband were just, and her kids, just faithful. Praying and sincere, honest, hardcore as you could be evangelical Christians. Just really, really lovely family. And she goes, he's dying. He has a brain tumor the size of an orange sticking out of his head. It's not operable. We've done everything possible. We have gone to every doctor, every specialist. We don't have any money left. My other kids are just bankrupt because we've poured everything we had into our child, our baby. And my husband and I are now estranged. We're just, the pressure of this dying child was so heavy in their hearts. And she said, and I am angry with God. How could he do this to us? We have walked in the light of his admonition. We have been faithful. She named it. I didn't say anything. I just listened because she needed to pour out her heart. And at the whole time I'm thinking, wow, I really need to thank my pastor buddy for sending this lady to me, because he obviously had been catching it from both ends for a long time. And I felt like he was kind of passing the buck. And she said, I have this much money left. And they say there's a cure down in Mexico. And should I can take this money and go to Mexico, or I can take this money and I can feed my family for a month. What do I do? What do I do? Honestly, I'm looking at that, and I go into this whole counselor thing. I'm pretty young and when this happened. And I'm like, well, you know, as counselor, we really don't give advice. We blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm backpedaling. I'm trying not to. And you need to make your own decisions. You know, to go do what your heart tells you, what God's will is. Da, 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 da. She said, no! I need to know what to do. And Wesley said, you would tell me what to do. And that was another moment that I thought, boy, I'm going to thank him. Wait till I see him. Buddy, oh buddy. And so I prayed like 2 seconds. Lord, please help. Seriously, that's about my prayer. And I looked at her and I said, well, I feel like if you don't try everything you possibly can and your son passes away, then you probably will have that guilt the rest of your life. And she said, thank you. And she grabbed the picture and she walked out. And I was like, holy Toledo, what have I done? So I kind of put it in the back. I kind of forgot about it. I just kind of left it alone. I didn't dance around with it much after that. I did call Wesley and tell him what a jerk he was. And he's a lukewarm preacher at best anyway. He could preach his way out of a wet paper bag. Anyway, several weeks later, I'm not even sure how many, I get a phone call at home. And it's this lady. And I was like, okay, yeah, how's it going? She said, well, I went to Mexico. We stayed in a rat-infested, horrible hotel, because that's all we could afford, in the middle of Mexico City. I don't know if you've ever been to Mexico City, but it's a pretty rough place in areas. And we went to these healers, these doctors, shaman, whatever they were, and they twisted him and they poked on him and they took x-rays and they took all my money and they told me he's going to die. He's going to die. Oh, man. And she's telling me this story, and I'm shortening it, you know, because she had ridden on these third-class buses from the airport and on and on and on. She's telling me these horrible events. They were sick, the food, everything, just everything. And so, and she goes, I was exhausted. I didn't sleep the entire time out of fear, and he didn't sleep. And I got on the airplane, and I'm holding him in my arms, and I'm exhausted, and a man comes in, and he sits down next to me, and he goes, can I help you with your son? And she goes, no, he won't go to anybody else. And the child leaped out of her arms into this man's arms. And she fell asleep. She said, I was so exhausted, I just slept all the way back on the flight. And when we got there, he carried my son all the way out, all the way to my waiting car in the parking lot. Back then, you could still park next to Hobby or wherever it was, or Continental, I guess, you know. And he carried him, and he put him in the car, and he said goodbye, and she went around buckling the baby in and stuff, and she goes, I turned around to thank him, he just wasn't there. He was just gone. And so I start back home to Friendswood. Start back home. And the child hadn't spoken in a long time. Everything was wrong with his brain. And he reached across and he hit her and he said, Mama, I'm hungry. And she almost wrecked. She said, I swerved and almost hit a car. And she looked at her son, and it wasn't there. It just wasn't there. The lump was gone. She reached up, she pulled over, and she felt him, and it wasn't there. And so she immediately turned around, hauled butt to the medical center where he was being treated by these oncologists. And she went into MD Anderson, and she didn't care. She didn't ask for permission. She went straight into the doctor's area, and they came in, and the doctor examined the boy, and they took x-rays. And this is back when you still had lights in the rooms. And he brought the x-rays in, big old, long, tall, talking doctor, big old Texan. He slapped these things up there, and he goes, "I don't know where it is, but it's not there." She fell on the ground in front of the entire medical staff and just praised God and worshiped and cried and just absolutely begged forgiveness for her anger with God. Now, I don't know. I'll let you draw your own conclusions about what happened. But I don't know who that was in that seat next to her. But he got off without luggage. He got off with nothing. And I don't know, but Paul is faithful when he writes, and he says, do not fail to entertain strangers. For no, some have been angels. By this time, I was sitting on the floor of my dining room. We had a big old stretch cord. I mean, this is back in the day. And I am just in tears, just rejoicing with her. And he grew up. And I don't know what he does today, but he's alive. Isn't that something? Sometimes God puts you in the most awkward position to help somebody heal, and you have a choice. You can go with the awkwardness. You can go with the embarrassment. You can go with the sheer tenacity that maybe you have, or you can run away from it. I had no idea that was going to happen when I talked to that lady. The only thing I get credit for is my willingness to talk to her and not just say, well, there's nothing we can do and I can't help you and blah, blah, blah. I believe my answer I gave her was divine. I think it was something that was orchestrated by God. And at the time, I thought I had made a mistake, that I had not done a very good thing. And boy, did I learn. So, no. No, but she did give her testimony at the church. And I feel like that not just changed the church, but it changed the whole cosmology of their neighborhood and their things, because that kind of miracle, boy was dying. And I haven't shared that story in a long time, but it was life-changing for me too. As a counselor, as a mediator, as a teacher, as a person, I look at each situation and invest God's will from my life into them. Triangulation, I don't have to have the perfect answer. I don't have to have the perfect knowledge. I don't have to have the best scripture. I don't have to have any of that. What I have to do is follow the path that God's laid out and be faithful. That's it. My prayer today, I've really simplified them. God, show me what you want me to do. Lord, help me do it. Lead me to it. Let me be part of that you are engaging me in. And the important part is, Lord, don't let me mess it up. Don't let me do stupid stuff inside your will. Let me do what you want. That's it. That's it. If you can look at somebody and say, look, it says in the book of Romans, if you call on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, you shall be saved. And you don't know any other scripture, that's all you need. That's it. You don't need anything else. So if you can have a cup of coffee with a coworker, or you can have a moment with a redheaded stranger, and they're wondering about stuff in life, or they're broken, or you go, hey, I'll be glad to pray with you. Or at the same time, have you accepted Lord Jesus Christ? And if they say anything like, well, my mama used to take me to church, that's your intro right there. That's your intro, you know. And just do it with love. Do not take out your Bible and beat them with it. Unless, of course, they need it. Okay. All right, I'm done. Pastor, I'm going to turn it over to you. The 15th, if you guys want to get certified and happy-fied and stuff, come on out.
All right. Well, let's give Dr. Barnette a hand once again. Thank him so much. And if you do have more information, you have his information there, or you can go to the Bible College. We're going to be connecting with them and hopefully do some more stuff in the future. Tell some other people about it. I would love to have to bring him back down here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And have something else like this and spread the word that we can help penetrate and saturate our community,
Yeah, that'd
build
be great.
families. You understand that families are the nucleus of our society, and as healthy as we get our families, our society will be just as healthy. So thank you guys for coming out as well, and
Yes.
especially for those that
Thank
are
you.
listening for other churches. Thank you for being a part of our time together.
Absolutely. And feel free to take the calendars and give them to other people. Okay, they're, you know, I can only use so many at one time. So, no, please, pens, calendars, anything. So,
Awesome.
I counseled a man, his son was living with a woman, he was a pastor of a church. His son was living with a woman, they had a baby, and the woman broke up with the young man and said, I don't want to see you again, went to Dallas, said, this kid will never be part of your life. Well, Grandpa, the pastor, was very depressed over it. And he came to me, and it was our first session, and I said to him, well, you know, you're a man of faith. You understand God moves